Good evening. This is Suzanne Knabe-Nicole from Police Science Doctor. I hope you all had a good Christmas and that you will get into the new year very well and very comfortably. I hope that whatever you're doing, you're making the most of it, and I hope that you're staying safe, and please distance yourself from others who do not live with you, even if you've been really glad to see them again. Let's just keep each other safe and ourselves and make sure this virus dies out as soon as possible. So again, it's Tuesday. I'm going to do this live every Tuesday now after I've sent out the Research Science Snippet email to all the Police Science Doctor email subscribers. So if you want to be one of those subscribers and get useful information that I hope you find useful, like these Research Science Snippets, into your inbox and other announcements that are relevant to policing and research, investigative psychology and criminology and things like that, everything that Police Science Doctor covers and deals with, just go to policesciencedoctor.com and leave your details on the registration form that pops up or that is at the bottom of each page. So you can get onto the email list and you will get this sent straight to you. So this week's research science snippets are on burglary, rape investigations, and witness interviews. So the first one about burglary is offenders become familiar with an area whilst burgling and often go back to the same area later. So the link to that paper is there. At least you can access the abstract. If your organization doesn't have a subscription, so you can at least read the abstract. But the reason why I wanted you to have this is because you can think about what that means for your investigations and for your victims and for people who live in the same area as the victim. So if burglars tend to come back to where they've burgled before, that means that people who live there are at risk. Perhaps their previous victims are at risk of being re-victimized. So what will you tell your victim? To prepare themselves, to maybe make some arrangements to make their home safer. The second paper, that's actually an open access paper, so you can read the whole article, and it's dealing with rape attrition. So that's the rate of drop-offs of victims who reported a rape actually stopping to support the police. So the problem is that they report a rape, but the criminal justice system is not very welcoming to all of this. And unfortunately, many victims stop supporting the police at some point during the investigative process. And this paper suggests that there's some evidence that there's two support mechanisms that are in place, at least in the UK, but also in some other countries, that can help reduce the number of attritions. So we don't want rape victims to withdraw from the process. We want them to go through with it because guilty offenders need to be put to justice, because otherwise they're just free to offend again. So one of those support mechanisms that helps reduce the incidence or the risk of attrition is ISVAs, so that's independent sexual violence advisors. So these are people who are not employed by the police, they're independent, but they work together with police if the victim wishes them to do so, but their main function is to support the victim. And so that can be a collaboration between the council, between health services and the police, but they are independent. So the victim can always decide whether they want to get the police involved or not, but the ISVA will support them regardless. The second mechanism that helps is SARCs, so Sexual Assault Referral Centers. These are places where a victim of sexual violence can go to be forensically examined and have evidence taken from them forensically to support a future case. So they can either decide they want to go to police with that evidence, or the SARC will actually keep it for a while to give the victim time to decide that. So again, it's independent of whether they want this to be investigated or not. The evidence is collected and is ready to be used if and when the victim feels ready to prosecute. And so these centers have also been suggested to reduce the attrition rate somewhat. So that's something to think about when you're investigating rape, when you're dealing with a victim. Just make sure they have all the information on these support mechanisms available and see if you can get them to actually take them up. And the third snippet is on witness interviews. So there was a study done in Sweden, and the researchers compared people who are being interviewed as witnesses in either the native tongue Swedish or in English. So they obviously spoke English very well. And they found there was a difference, not in the accuracy of information they were giving to the interviewer, but the fact that when they were being interviewed in their non-native language, as in English, in this case, they were more likely to yield to suggestive questions. So a good interviewer will not ask suggestive questions, but unfortunately many do. And you're more vulnerable to that if you're being interviewed in your non-native language. So the question is, again, what this is information for you to consider. If you're interviewing someone, even if they speak your language very well, would it be better perhaps to get a translator in nonetheless? Because the problem is that it is more taxing to be interviewed in a language that you learned as a second language or third language or fourth language, whatever it may be. And that increases suggestibility, and it's also suboptimal for memory search. So when you're trying to remember something, it makes it a bit harder. But also those people interviewed in a different language perceive themselves as less credible, even though they were equally as accurate as if they were being interviewed in their own language. So 3 snippets of information for you to think about, to see if they're of interest to you. If so, then just click on the link in the document that I've either sent out in the email or that you can download from the website if you're a subscriber, and read up more about it. So the only snippets that I use for these, there's obviously a lot of interesting research out there, but what I send you and what I talk about on these live videos is only what I think you can use straight away in some way, in some shape or form. So I hope you found this interesting, and all the best, and I'll speak to you next week.